Hey guys, it's Ace Maneuvers here. I just got done watching the finals for the Cartamagica Provisional Showdown tournament. I had a lot of fun. I don't know what my final placing is, but 7th seed going into Top Cuts with All Might 3. It was a character I thought that I would see more of in Top Cuts. And this is my first time doing a deck list video, a deck profile video. Is that what they call it? I don't even know what they're called. It's going to be really scuffed. My camera's going to go out of focus a lot. But you guys know what the cards do. I feel like you guys already know what's in the deck, but it's a card game thing. It's what card gamers do. So All Might, he's got 6 hand size, 30 life, and that's a big boy. And then he gets +1 speed or damage to his punch or fury attacks based on the cards in your opponent's hand. And then his other ability is to draw 2 cards by committing himself and one of your foundations. So at face value, to me, this is a very aggressive character. This is an aggro character. The draw 2 cards has kind of like a fair cost for 2 foundations, but having it on character is very important, and you'll see that as we go through the deck. But my personal philosophy with this deck was hand exhaustion, because the opponent doesn't want to hold a lot of cards. So if we build the deck to go deeper and play lots of attacks, we will get more for our volume than other decks will. So let's get into it. We're going to go from the low difficulty foundations up. We're going to start with 4 copies of It Can't Be Fixed. Got an amazing block. It is our only 0 diff, so the fact that it blocks well and it checks well is all very important. But building 5 foundations, or in the case of the top 16 matchup with Jiro, building 6 foundations because you have a 0 diff is so good. It's so low risk for him going second. It's literally 0 risk going first because your opponent can't attack you. And so this card is just very solid overall. It stops targeted committal. It stops stun. So it's versatile in its defense. All in all, just, a card you're probably always going to play because of its difficulty and its block mod. At least with the current card pool. Help me out, guys. All right, self-sacrifice. I regret playing this as a one-of because it's the best way I had to get out of deadlock. And my ability to play my whole hand out and still have resources to block with made going to deadlock very easy. However, unlike Kirishima, I can't selectively get out of deadlock as quickly. And this is one of pretty much the only ways to do it. The +1 low block makes it very easy to put in a deck as well. So in retrospect, I probably should have played more self-sacrifice. 2 Manly Passionate Guy, a card I was going to play 4 of. I'm a nerd who likes to block. I like to ramp. And so this card is almost like a 2-for-1. You get to block with a card, potentially taking no damage, and then you also get to use its effects. So this card is super powerful, but because we're an aggro deck, sorry, I'm trying to make sure that my camera doesn't shake all the time. But because we're an aggro deck, I was convinced to trim this down to 2 of, and I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't see this more than I did. It was very useful when I needed it, but it was not something that was progressing my game plan. So, I might have cited, the changes I would have made, we'll go over with the next card, but I might have cited 2 of these in the future, and we'll talk about that with the sideboard. So this is another card I kind of wish I had just made 4 of, is Resistance. It has Breaker, and it's one of our only damage reduction cards in the set. If you don't have damage reduction on your face, then you're probably not reducing too much damage. You're So Obvious has a damage reset, so potentially it can reduce more damage from a super buffed attack. But as far as just telling your opponent, hey, I don't want to take that much damage from your boring-ass vanilla 4/4, I kind of wish I had seen that more. And again, the Breaker is huge, and I always forget this is actually a stun hate card. The stun 2 on Pillar Swing can be pretty nasty. And decks that are focused on stun, and I think set 2, I think it's 2 dot is going to have a bunch of stun coming for the water range package, which is going to be a way that you can get through certain defenses. So the stun hate also probably going to be really clutch coming up. Bonds of Friendship. It's a 6 check. I was really not super keen on running cards just for their block and their check, but it's also a 1 difficulty, and Fury attacks do come up. And again, we were just talking about how there's not that much damage reduction, right? So I hate Hardened Frenzy with a passion, because I would much rather just hold this +1 high block and take no damage from it. However, the correct call most of the time is to just flip Bonds of Friendship on it, and that's probably the only attack I reduced 3 damage on with it. So next we have 4 copies of Note Taking. This is just +2 speed to a punch, very straightforward. It's a low block that we needed because we weren't running extra passionate guys and we weren't running extra self-sacrifice. I want to say I would trade these for self-sacrifice because of the block check and the other stuff I was talking about. But early game, getting that 2 speed, man, is pretty good. It's hard to say in a format where there's not a lot of different ways to put stats on things. This is just going to be a solid card if all of your attacks are punch. And then celebrity status, the Recursion Extraordinaire. So this is the other side of coordinated effort, right? If you block it, it comes down. If you don't block it, or if you partial block it, or if you just reduce the damage and take some, it's going to the momentum. We're putting it on top of our deck, and then we're drawing it with All Might, or we're using Destined for Mainstream Success, which is just flip 2 foundations, we draw our attack back. This card is really good against Jiro herself on webcam. Going into the top 16 matchup, I told myself if I just build all my Destins, she basically doesn't want to use her enhance anymore, which All Might already can just draw through it. So the flash offense, the big offense, was really scary, but having the tech for her once per turn enhance was really good. And the most important thing about this card, in my opinion, is most of the time it's going to let you get out of checking bad. Most of the time you're going to call attack, it's going to be a foundation or whatever, a non-attack, and you're going to know you're going to check well. It's like Observant Student, except it also +1s you if you named attack. So the main reason you call attack, unless you need a foundation to block with, or you know what's there and you need it, is because at worst you have 2 attacks on top of your deck and you still check bad. But most of the time, if you name attack, you get the attack. You're not going to check bad. And if you don't if you don't get the attack, you're not going to check bad. So it's Observant Student with more upside, worse block. I ran 1 good impression. Pretty nutty early. Difficulty reducing effects are very strong because it doesn't commit itself. You basically still have the 1 foundation to commit. Probably could just drop this for one of the other cards I talked about. It's not, it's a 1-0, so it can't be super impactful in the first place. But we have so much ability to refund our foundations that I don't think this was ever super necessary. You're so obvious. Better than I initially thought. I didn't run 4 of because of the 4 check. I stand by that. But defensively, this is a staple on its symbols. Defensively, every symbol should, or every deck that should be playing at least 1 speed or damage reset, and especially if it goes both ways. If it's like I can reset my own if you reduce it, or I can reset yours. It does speed and damage. Not a lot of cards can hate on speed and damage selectively, so it's like if you can't block anyway, cool, it's back to printed damage. If you wanted to block it, boom, it's back to printed speed. I popped this for straight up just E-Destroy +2 damage to reverse throw a bunch. Super good card. I'm citing 2 more. And, there's just some matchups where you're like, okay, my only defense is to reset the speed or damage. Passing the torch. This is the card that lets us play the way that we do. This is the card that lets me empty my whole hand because I'm going to draw my whole hand later. As long as I can effectively block, which usually doesn't take a full, 6 cards or nothing. This allows me to play defense because as an aggro character, I don't want to hold foundations because if you don't attack me, I'm going to have to hold them even longer. I can only review 1 card. So this is going to sound really bad, but a lot of the time I would play out all but 1 card, block with that one. I'd commit to blocking with that 1 card unless it was like a reverse or the block zone didn't match. Because then at worst, I can draw 2 with All Might if I have 1 in my hand. And then if I block with the first one, I can refill my hand with Passing the Torch. So this lets me not worry about how many cards I'm building and holding. However, it does mean I have to play defense completely randomly. But because every card in the game has a block on it, drawing 2 cards, statistically, you're going to get 2 out of 3 zones. And then the draw 4, hopefully you're going to get 1 of each. So having multiple of these down, even just committing to draw for 1 is insane. Again, nerfing the Giro enhance by just going, okay, well, I can selectively draw when I need to. Super, super strong. Super, super staple. Drawing cards is good. Card draw and card game, very powerful. Always draw a card. Card draw, good. Don't mill yourself. Draw a card. Specialist of Sound. I love the response on this card, even though most of the time I used it, it didn't matter because I was building on my first turn or my next card couldn't fail or something like that. But combined with All Might, who has selective draw, if I check it to play an attack, I can see if I want to draw that card or not. Other than that, it's the best speed hate on the symbol. It lets you defend against flash attacks. It lets you defend against Aida ending the enhanced step, fulfilled my duty. It's just speed hate, and again, it's another card that allows me to play the defense that I do. And a lot of the decks that topped were, at least that I saw, were not pumping speed. But the one that won the tournament was, in fact, pumping a lot of speed. And so you need to be able to, this card came in clutch for me in top 16, you need to be able to have speed hate on every, on all attacks, on flash attacks as well as normal attacks, and this has the right timing for it. Harden, I played this as a 1-of. I thought about citing more. I love to block with it and then recycle it. The damage reduction, this set, it comes in weird places. It's not, super reliable. If you get hit by the low while it's in your hand, what can you do? If you're partial with a high, blocking. I saw a lot of hardened jabs get blocked by this card, which is a little depressing, but, a lot of times it can be the optimal play because you have resistance down, you have other damage reduction from being Kirishima. It putting 3 damage on hardened attacks became relevant more than I'd like to admit as well. So I don't know if I'd run it again, especially if they give me another high block that just reduces damage while it's in the stage. So kind of an iffy card here, but pretty good when you sideboard into Kirishima. Pull no punches. It's momentum generation. It clears the card pool. I love to block with a punch and then have a momentum for my next turn. It's also another deadlock threat, so if you get into those games that go long, I never had it down for deadlock, unfortunately, but it's only a 1-of. I still think it stays a 1-of going forward because having that that random, like if someone sticky balls if you have this down and the top card you discard piles a punch, your opponent can't really sticky balls you. They don't want to clog you. So it's a little versatile, but we don't use momentum for a lot. It's mostly for the recursion, but going attack, pull no punches, celebrity status, draw it. It's definitely worth the play, even though we already have 4 copies of a 3-diff. It's coordinated effort. I shouldn't have to talk about coordinated effort. You know what it does. It checks a 6, so you can run 4 of it, even though it's unique. It blocks mid, so it blocks every attack. So you can run 4 of it, even though it's unique. It has an amazing deadlock ability. Yeah, it makes the kit work so much better than it ever should. And then the lone asset, which readies coordinated effort. That's what it does. I don't even know. I think I had it down one time and then immediately went on the next turn without ever using it. Might have readied something once. I did like seeing the Unwavering Slash with it, but we'll see if that becomes a thing in the future or not, especially if the kicks stay relevant. Plus Ultra, I probably could have borrowed one or more, one more of these. 2 is probably worth it. But because we're an aggressive character in that 5 build, that 6 build, the illustrious 6 build, the elusive 6 build is so important to me. I don't want to jam myself up with too many actions. But plus Ultra is super clutch. So probably run it at 2. Setup Strike is a 1 of. It does what it says on the tin. It sets up your next attack. Having the ability to flex speed onto itself for a momentum dump was something I wanted as well. My only uses for momentum are plus Ultra and recursion of attacks in my momentum. So I thought it'd be nice to have one there. It's also appealing to block, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it has the same zone as Texas Smash and most of my non-throws and chops. So if it wasn't a high attack, I don't know if I would have played it as a 1 of. And I wish that instead I had played 2 of Heroic Strike. Heroic Strike is the only attack in my deck that affects my opponent's board. It does a pretty damn good job of it, being able to essentially stun 3 as your third attack. Your third card in the card pool at least. Yeah, it's a pretty unassuming attack, but to be on the receiving end of it feels way worse. Like looking at it by itself, you're like, okay, well if I played second, it's like 4 high 4 stun 2, which is kind of pretty good, and it gets around the stun hate of cards like Resistance, so it's not as easy to deal with as it looks like at first. And I could see myself playing 4 of this card in some builds for this. It's hard to evaluate by itself because it relies on what your card pool looks like, but definitely better than I would have thought just to go stun 2, just to commit 2 foundations, Texas Smash. This card I waffled on because I did want to play some non-punch attacks, but looking back over it, everything else was going to be punch except the slots where this was going to go, and it puts 4 damage on reverse throw. It has the timing necessary to make plus Ultra a game-ending event more often than not. You don't get punished as much for having the low hand size because we have, or for discarding the card really, because we have Passing the Torch and All Might. So there was 1 or 2 times where I actually had to draw more cards to pitch to Texas Smash, even though I only had attacks in my hand. And so this card, I'm glad I ran it. I really hope to play like a more diverse lineup, I guess. Because this card it just accounts for 11 damage, but it puts it on other bodies, so that's pretty cool. It does give you some sequencing issues, which makes the deck a little more interesting. But overall, it's a very easy deck, I would say, to pilot. For Hardened Jab. What does it do? It picks up face down and then builds you 1. This oftentimes just acts as restanding 1, which is good enough for an aggro deck, for a deck that wants to play more attacks and you have cards in hand, which is just like the whole philosophy of this offense. The attacks aren't super elusive, but we're going to get to the elusive attacks in a minute. And this card it just enables so much. Turn 2, I want to build 1 for free. That's so sick. I want to rebuild. a card that my opponent flipped with their effect, boom, counterplay. A destined that a destined for mainstream success I had to use earlier, boom, we rebuy it. A lot of people are saying this card's not that extraordinary if you can't pick up an attack with it, which obviously the cards that deal damage and win you the game are better to pick up with it. But the ability to, if people start using it to just selectively hold blocks and re-ready foundations, like I don't know what else to say other than this is just so much value. Like even if they block it, if you committed a foundation that's face down that you used and then you pick it up and then you just rebuild it later, you're still +1, right? Like if this is the only attack you play and you have a face down that you pick up when you build one, you're now still just +1 face up foundation because you're able to rebuild it. So this card is really good even if it can't pick up an attack. And then Hard Chop, this is like the first of what I would call an elusive attack. You think of things like flying and magic can only be blocked by flyers. You think of like trample, which tramples over, deals damage. Was it elusive? It might be the elusive keyword in Ruterra, whatever. This card, because most people don't want to give me more than +2 speed or +2 damage, they're going to hold 2 cards. What does Hard Chop say? You got to pay 2 cards to block me. In retrospect, I wish I had the heroic strikes in the side to side into the Kirishima match, because Kirishima can defend effectively with 1 card in hand. That's not something I tested against. I basically didn't do any testing for this event, which is not a cop-out. I was just not sure what I wanted to play. I was probably going to play Life Froppy because I'm just standing the character, but at the last minute, I was like, this just doesn't feel good. I'm going to see if I can play something else. And so Hard Chop, being able to blow up a face down and then ready one. Again, we're just restanding things. Less versatile, obviously, there because it doesn't go to your hand. You can't rebuild it. You can't use it again. It's not going to plus you an attack. But the fact that -1's your opponent's hand if they want to block it means that this card came in and did 7 damage so often for so many people. I don't know how many times I saw one of these get blocked, but it was not often. It was almost never. I had to block like 3 or 4 of these with 7 cards in hand. I ended up having to draw 2 random cards and drew the wrong block zone. So this card can chew through 7 cards if your opponent's low enough, or if they have to block it and you pump it. It is, or multiple copies of it, being able to recur with coordinated and stuff. Like, so this being played against me by other Kirishimas and stuff was just like a hassle to block. But they didn't have too much issue blocking it themselves. Also the Breaker 1 made it super clutch for holding. Like I would, I don't mind holding this early. I don't mind blocking with it. But it does run our main game plan of I have more attacks than you can block, but not because not because I'm Kirishima, I'm picking them up more than you have cards in hand, but because you're choosing not to have cards in hand. You have to make the choice to either give me a ton of stats, which again, by the way, if you hold 4 cards, guess what? It's 8 speed now. You're still not blocking it. So if you hold too many cards, you're not blocking. If you hold too few cards, you're not blocking it. This opens up so much of the offense for this deck. I would say it's almost more important than Hardened Jab from a philosophical sense, but the actual power of picking up one and restanding one is hard to debate. And then finally, we've got Reverse Throw. It's the opener. It's the closer. It's the recursion target. Just because it's got the throw keyword, this is also something I would call elusive, or whatever the word is for other card games. Effects that make it hard to block, effects that make it more than your standard defense to deal with. So Reverse Throw has the punch keyword, which we need to give it stats from all the other stuff. If you pump it enough, or if you don't block it, it draws if it deals 5 or more. So a lot of times you open up, and again, the 2 card example, you're going to put this down and you're going to say, okay, it's 7 damage. So if you block it, I don't draw a card. And if you don't block it, you take 7 and I do. And so, blocking and taking 4, whereas, by itself, if they don't block it, they would take 5 kind of thing, it's not hard to, again, put your opponent in a bad situation because they have 2 cards in and they say, wow, if I block this, I take almost all of the damage that would have just done by itself. And now I have 1 card in hand to defend with against a character that can turn around and draw 2 more cards. A character that can, pick up attacks from his staging area because we play Hardened Jab. A character that can put attacks on top of his deck with Destined for Mainstream Success and then draw them again. It's a good opener, and because it is an elusive attack, it is reliable to pump as a closer. Putting plus ultra on it was clearly the play if you can, if it pushes it for lethal. And only 1 symbol has throw hate right now. So if you're not playing against a wall cling symbol, like, you can pretty much run roughshod over just playing the same copy of reverse throw for every copy of celebrity status that you draw and or having coordinated effort. And then we've got the sideboard. 3 capture evildoers. 3 capture evildoers came in very handy against Jiro. I don't know if I cited it in as momentum hate in any other matchup. I didn't play anyone with Meteor. This was my anti-Meteor Shower tech. Kind of anti-home run comment tech, but not as much. It also, I probably should have cited it in against good symbol Hiroshima. But that deck was hitting me for a lot more than 1 momentum, so it probably wasn't going to matter too much because he gets an attack back. But being able to steal momentum is super good. The form on it is super good. The block and the breaker on it, super good. So it's not too bad to put in, to run, right? It's not too clunky even as an action. But as I mentioned before, the 5 build is super important. So I didn't want to cite it in unless I really needed the momentum stealing enhance. That was the most important thing to me, was to stop people from recurring things from their momentum and to not blow me out turn 2 with a home run comment. So a very cool card. Feels really good when you get to use it. And I drew 2 of these in my opening hand and held them forever and still managed to defend pretty well. So this deck can afford cards like this. Like, this deck can afford weird tech where I can -1 from my hand just to rob you of a momentum, but still block very well. Next, we have Planning Ahead. This is for the mono zone decks, which I don't think I actually faced at all. I played a lot of mono zone Froppy before Tongue Whip came out, and so I thought I would side this in game 2s and 3s more than I did. I sided in a couple times when there's only a couple minutes left, and I'm like, I'm not going to be on offense. I'm going second, whatever. Like, this is the defensive call. Rewards you for having knowledge. Very good against flash attacks. Good, one of your few defenses against flash attacks. One of your few defenses against Harden Chop. I sided it in and called low to avoid Harden Chop a couple times. You're So Obvious. 2 copies in the side. If we're siding to play defensively, if we are siding on the draw instead of on the play, having more defensive cards in your deck, and especially when that flexes for offense too, very strong, very powerful versatility, and I can, again, it's a staple defensively on its symbols. Even if you're not playing punches, you need to be able to reset your opponent's big giant attacks early in a game, and defend properly. So even if you don't have punches, probably still a staple. And then we got the 2 more resistance, which is mostly from when I was siding in Kirishima, because these combo so well together to reduce damage on the next one. Pick this guy up, breaker block later in the string. A lot of times I want to block the first one, resistance for -2 on the next one. Pick this up for -4. Now I have a block for the next attack, right? So also in there for the stun hate. Probably, even without the stun hate being super relevant for this tournament, I think it will be in the future. And I probably could have afforded just to run more of this, just because it has just a very unique place. It's low difficulty, so it doesn't clunk up your hand. Again, it's got Breaker, which is one of the only ways to hand trap your opponent. Breaker is one of the few things you can do from your hand that your opponent can't account for at the start of your turn to affect their decisions. So if you ever hear me talking about Breaker a lot for this game, it's in its current iteration, it's super important. Last but not least, we have Kirishima. It's just the meta call. There's a lot of decks that can't deal with him picking up these selective blocks for their, one really big attack, or they can't deal with him just reducing damage on all their meaningless weenie setup attacks. And, it's just the kind of thing where once you have knowledge of your opponent's deck and you're going second, this is the character that can pull you back into the game. So while this deck is an aggro deck built for a lot of consistency for attacking, Kirishima really doesn't have any issues with that. Like, I'm playing his attack lineup almost verbatim. I wish I had cited Hardened Frenzies. I probably would have cited into Kirishima more. I think I only cited into him 3 or 4 times, but it's one of those things where if you have a tough, grueling game 1 and you win with only 10 minutes left, it probably doesn't matter how fast or slow anyone plays. There was a game 3 against Christopher Bromley where there was 3 minutes left on the clock, and I was like, man, I hope I draw attacks, because even if I don't kill him, I can play out my turn, then time will be called. It's not scumbaggery, it's the game. It's just how time works in a game, as long as you're not intentionally going slow. And I played 3 whole attacks, and I was like, man, I cannot find 3 minutes. So I don't know where some of the people are coming from that Kirishima will always take people to time. You should be calling judges on people who are taking too long. It's just the kind of thing where you can live forever, and you cannot kill them that quickly. It's not a slow play issue. It is a consistency and defensive power issue. But it is, again, the meta call. It is an easy sideboard. You really don't lose anything except speed pump from switching to these two, and maybe like early game power. The biggest thing for me personally playing this deck over this deck is I want to draw more additional cards personally, like from, as a player, than I want to make the decisions on which ones to pick up. This one debuilds you one, this one draws 2 additional. And so that kind of thing feels better to me. As far as overall power level goes, as you guys saw, drawing 2 random cards, not as good as selecting them. But again, the primary philosophy of you choosing to hold less cards so I can extend over what I would call a volume strategy translates very well between these two. So that's pretty much the deck, guys. Again, I'm pretty sure y'all knew what was going to be most of it. But I wanted to make this deck profile video because that's what card gamers do, I guess. I don't really watch a lot of them, so hopefully it wasn't as shitty quality as it feels making this. And I don't know how to do outros, so I'm just going to plug the Ace Maneuvers tournament circuit. I'm going to probably put a blurb up on the screen, and I'll catch you guys later. I had a lot of fun. Oh, please. Shout out to Brandon Jones for letting me borrow the deck. Oh, I was supposed to do that at the beginning. I'm so sorry. I was going to play Froppy up until Wednesday, and that deck just, it has so much fun, so many fun things I can do with it, but none of them are as good as just adding a throw to the top of my deck and then drawing it, right? Like, so at the very last minute, I was like, man, I don't want to just play Kirishima, because again, the play style personally to me is like weirdly reductive. Like, I want to choose the right block at the right time, but I also want to get the damage reduction to matter more. So that is like I said, this is an easy deck. This is a very easy deck to play, and I don't think Kirishima is like hard. Going, yeah, I'll put this reverser on my hand. That's not very hard either. Don't get me wrong. The game itself, I don't think is very hard. The issue is you have to put in the reps. You have to get used to all the little things. There's so many little little one, 1 2 1, little tiny buttons to press and little tiny sequences. I'm on stream fucking myself up by drawing one, doing the draw one from reverse throw after looking and seeing that there's a foundation, or I called it early and then later looked and then was like, man, I don't want to draw that kind of thing. But I was just trying to hit all my buttons because you go through all the enhances. So Brandon Jones, I hit him up I hit up the Vegas playgroup last minute and I was like, yo, I don't want to play Froppy anymore. And I didn't want to play Kirishima. And I was like, can I just play All Might? Because he gets to play all the cards in his hand. Then you just draw more cards. And then you can make decisions from there. And that kind of thing can scare a lot of people because I'm going down to 1 or 2 cards, but really I'm not. You're going down to 1 or 2 cards, and really, is that what you wanted to do? So I really like the philosophy of like sheer inertia. Like I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket with an attack like Recipro Burst, or like a big end of string home run comet. But I do think that the recursion from this deck makes it so that there's really no winning choice, right? There's really no, again, Kirishima's just the one who can defend against it really well. And I probably should have sided into Kirishima in my top cuts match, but I figured, I lost game 1 as All Might, but now I'm going first. So he's the more aggressive character, and having played Kirishima all day and not having made a Kirishima deck, it felt like bad to go into the mirror match for that one specifically. But thank you to Brandon Jones again. I wouldn't be here without you. I wouldn't be here without any of the rest of the Vegas crew. Thank you guys for watching the video. Like I said, I'm terrible at outros, so I will catch you guys later.